I have a turtleneck top here that I'm wanting to change to be a round neck top. I've done this with a number of turtlenecks and quite enjoy the process and the result for having those tops be that much more usable within my wardrobe. I don't wear turtlenecks often, but I wear round neck long sleeve t-shirts all the time. So I wanted to change them over from being turtlenecks to round neck tops in a efficient but very, very durable way. I wanted it to last well, stand up to normal wear and washing, and to look unnoticeable, really. To look nice and neat, and when moving through my day, for it to not be noticeable that this has been altered. So to do this, the first portion of the footage I do not have. So you trim the turtleneck part of the jersey knit fabric away from the t-shirt. The serge seam that is for the turtleneck, I simply cut directly below that with some sharp scissors, and trying to keep it so that I was cutting the same distance away, right next to it really, but the same distance away from the top. I removed the turtleneck portion of the top from the rest of it. Then holding it up, flat, even, making sure that the two shoulder seams are the same way, that the actual seam part of it is at the very top, and that the entire top is evenly placed down. I then check to make sure that the neckline is even. I'm not so bothered about the front and the back being markedly different in height. The rest of the construction of the top, there's no real difference between front and back. But what I'm more concerned about is whether one side dips down on the left or the right, and so therefore it's not an even round neck top. Once that has been established, that it is indeed even, I then work to pin out the jersey fabric. Now, this is going to be hand sewn, so if you're doing it with a machine or a serger or something, it will probably be very different. I have done this with hand sewing, so that's what I'm speaking to here. To begin, I simply just fold it down twice, fold it once, pin it, and then each of those pins remove it and fold it the second time. Pay particular attention to the shoulder seams, those serged shoulder seams, just because I want them to both lie evenly. I want them both to match, and that's the point that it kind of matters the stretch of the fabric. I don't clip the seams at all because it is a jersey fabric. It stretches, and so long as the stitch that I use is stretchy enough, it will absorb the curve of the neckline. It's not a sharp curve. There's no V or anything that I'm doing in there that might warrant clipping or binding. So I just let the jersey fabric stretch itself as I fold it over twice, making sure that those two serged edges on the shoulder seams, the serge seams are folding over directly over themselves so that it's flat, and so that I know that at that point it is even and it is not twisted. Kind of gives me two reference points. Once it's all pinned out evenly, again, check to make sure that it's even, and check to make sure that the entire neckline, there is no one side that drops down significantly lower than the other, and the other side is significantly higher. And once I've established that, it's time to begin sewing. To sew the fabric, I am in effect trying to work the stitches so that they zigzag against the line that I am working. So if I am working left to right, I want my stitches in a very tight zigzag to be going up and down but eventually ending up going left to right. So the zigzag heads left to right, but each individual stitch goes up, attach, down, attach. And by doing that, it's going to mean that there's that give for the fabric to stretch on itself. Jersey fabric is very stretchy. It is an idea to check which direction holds the greater amount of stretch, and to bear that in mind as you're working, so that you can, if the stretch is vertically as well as horizontally, then you'll want to work your zigzags diagonally, so that they're kind of slanted, and that will mean that you are able to have it stretch vertically as well as horizontally easier. When I'm working this, in order to have it entirely invisible on the front and disappear with no puckering, no pulling, no twisting, nothing like that, and no obvious stitches visible, the way that I work it is in that zigzag fashion. I knot it in the folded over section, and then I pick up 2 or 3 threads of the fabric on what will be the front side, but it's all worked from the inside. So I pick up a couple of threads, and then I pick up a couple of threads from the other side of those on my folded over twice section. And you just work your way back and forth, a couple of threads apart, pick up a couple of threads, then work up, pick up a couple of threads, down, pick up a couple of threads, up, pick up a couple of threads. And by doing that up and down in that fashion, I'm able to work so that each stitch is only a couple of threads apart. It spans down into either the folded over section or down into the fabric that will be visible, and then you're picking up another couple of threads there. For the portion that is the folded over section, obviously it's not so important that it is only 2 or 3 threads. If you want to just simply pick up that fold, and that would be half a dozen or more threads, not a problem. But on the right side, that will be visible from the front, by picking up only 2 or 3 threads at a time, you don't want 1 thread because that might pull a little bit more, but by picking up 2 or 3 threads at a time, that stitch is small enough that it will disappear into the weave of the fabric and it won't be noticeable. By having each individual stitch only a couple of threads apart at a time, or a couple of those knit rows in the jersey fabric apart at a time, it will mean that you are able to have your seam at the neckline not be visible from the right side, because there won't be big gaps between each of the stitches that is holding the fabric, so you won't end up with puckering between them showing. You won't end up with pulling, you won't end up with tension that way. You also won't end up on the inverse side, you won't end up with the seam unfolding itself, because the stitches are so close together that there is no room for it to unfold. So long as you keep your stitches really neat and even and close together like this, and on the inside making sure you don't have big sections between the right and the seam, that folded section, then there will be nothing to snag your fingers on, nothing to catch on your fingers or on jewelry or anything else like that as you pull the top on and off. And it will also remain really, really strong. It stands up to machine washing, so you can use it as you normally would. It stretches, you can tug it on, pull it over your head, pull it off, toss it about, it's not a problem. And the same thing, you can just put it in the washing machine. It doesn't need to go into a delicates bag. It's strong enough to be able to stand up to normal wear. So by doing all of that, you're able to have that functionality apparent and the alteration not be visible. In a sense, it almost becomes more invisible than if it were machine stitched originally, because you don't end up with a neckline seam visible there. It simply goes directly up and then folds over onto itself, which is something that I quite like. It's a very smooth, seamless look. So you simply work your way around, being very mindful to keep the fabric of your folded section smoothened with your thumb as you work, or your fingers as you work. You can see that is what I am doing as I'm working my way along here. And you keep your thumb over the folded section so that it is smoothened as you go. And then when you get to the shoulder, to that serge seam at the shoulder, you need to make sure that you do your stitches much closer together. If necessary, you can even work your way back and then go forward again, because that's a place where there is a lot of pressure and a lot of tension held within that seam, because you've got the serge seam that has been folded over twice. Equally, it's really important that you have that seam lie flat and straight and even, so that there is no pulling over the shoulders, and so that the front and the back of the top, they wear the same, and there's not a pulling on the front that is different to the back. So you need to make sure that that serge seam is straight and even by comparison to the rest of the shoulder seam, and then you keep working your way around. When you need to change your thread, or when you are finishing it all together, to end your thread, simply knot it into itself in the seam portion of the garment, and then hide your tail within that folded section. So long as you leave a long tail and weave that into the folded section, I have never had them come loose. And it is strong and robust, and so it stands up to machine wear.